Shalom, all praises to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the elder apostles, the bishops, and the elders of GMS who rule well, peace, salutations to the elect. My name is Aina. The title of the video is The West is Trying to Drag Russia into War. All right, so I typed this up into Google. The AI overview gave me some points here, and I'm gonna go over it, and we'll get the scripture. And before I get the scripture, we can play a little game. You can pick who's right, who you believe is right with the circumstances. So basically, I said the West is trying to drag Russia into war. It says whether the West is trying to drag Russia into war is a matter of intense geopolitical debate with starkly contrasting narratives from both sides. So now you have to decide: do you think is Russia causing the problems, or you think it's America and the NATO allies causing the problem? Now, for a little backstory, they don't give you different agreements were put into place between Russia and America regarding the expansion eastward with NATO. All right, and basically, America and the allies said they wouldn't encroach further, by adding more NATO members. So NATO was so close to Russia. And basically, what happened was Ukraine was the straw that broke the camel's back. So when they tried to make NATO Ukraine a NATO member, Russia went into NATO. Now that's what happened. Now again, you can look these little peace agreements wherever they had between them regarding the NATO expansion, all right, and all of that. But that's just the background already. This is Psalms 55, and I want to grab this verse 20, Psalms 55 and 20, since I kind of spoke on it. It says, "He had put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him. He have broken his covenant." So already that's one strike, um, because they agreed upon these things, not to encroach and spread NATO and whatnot. But again, camel that broke the straw that broke the camel's back was Ukraine, and Russia went into it. Psalm 55 and 21 says, "The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart." And he's going to back up the next precept I'm going to get. Right? His words were softened in oil, yet were they drawn swords. All right, so make your, drum roll, pick your person. All right, so it says, whether the West is trying to drag Russia into a war is a matter of intense geopolitical debate with starkly contrasting narratives from both sides. So the Russian perspective, the Russian leadership, including President Vladimir Putin, has frequently accused Western governments of attempting to destabilize Russia and of openly preparing for war. From Moscow's view, this is from Moscow's view. All right, it says you got the Shanghai Eye right there, which is I believe that's China. All right. It says NATO expansion is one point that Russia says it's a problem. Successive rounds of eastward NATO expansion are viewed as a direct security threat encroaching on Russia's historical sphere of influence. Point two, support for Ukraine said the continuous flow of Western weaponry, financial aid, and intelligence to Ukraine is seen as the West fanning the flames of the conflict and prolonging the war. Then you have sanctions. Economic sanctions and the freeing of central bank assets are interpreted as forms of hybrid or warfare designed to cripple the Russian economy. So these are the points that Russia said, right? So NATO expansion, NATO was continuing to expand, circling around Russia. Then you have support from Ukraine, which the West, right, America and NATO are giving them military equipment and funding and whatnot to continue fighting this war. And then you have many sanctions being put on Russia, heavy sanctions on Russia. Russia can't sell the oil, yada, 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 things like that. So now that was Russia's point. We have the Western and Ukrainian perspective. It says, conversely, the United States, NATO allies, and Ukraine firmly reject this narrative. Their core arguments include Russian aggression. Since Western officials maintain that Russia's unprovoked full-scale invasion of Ukraine initiated the conflict. All right, sovereign alliance. It says NATO is a defensive alliance. Eastern European countries voluntarily sought membership to protect themselves against historical Russian aggression. And then defensive aid, the military and financial support provided to Ukraine is strictly for self-defense and is intended to uphold international law. I paused right here because I thought immediately of genocidal maniacs over there in the land of Israel committing their war crimes. You had many flotilla boats and things like that kind of go over there and give aid and whatnot. And they was all rounded up, handcuffs, and some in most cases like raped, and beat up, and a member, a lot of other things. But I do think some NATO countries, so they say, got like warrants out for this guy. He steps his foot in their land and gets arrested, whatever the case may be. But anyway, the military and financial support provided to Ukraine is strictly for self-defense and is intended to uphold international law and the sovereignty of an independent nation. Right. So based on these things, what answer did you give yourself? Who you think is right, West or the East? The scripture says, Revelations 20, and we can get from 7. Right now, this is the wicked free, Satan freed and doomed. Right, Satan is adversary. All right, and they're adversary to Yahweh Bashman Shah. Right, the wicked who are the self-proclaimed white men. Right, the Edomites. Revelation 27 says, and when 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison and shall go out to deceive the nations. And mind you, I want to say that the head of the head of Job 9 and 24 is these the Amalekites, right? The small hatters, right? 1948ers, Job 9 and 24, but it goes to the banking elites, right? Like the Rothschilds, right? Who control and run the world. And one thing I'll say, all wars are banker wars. World War One, World War Two, and this World War Three that's about to pop up. These elites are pushing for this war, right? They're in control. They run America. America is their sword, their weapon. Job 9:24 says, "The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covers the faces of judges thereof. If not, wherein was he?" All right, so the wicked is currently ruling the world, and he covered the faces of the judges. The judges being, Yahweh, right? His son Yahweh Shah, right? The true power, right? Yahweh being the true power, and they made his image to look like an Edomite, basically a white person, and that's not how the scriptures describe our power. All right, so anyway, this is what Satan came out to do. Revelation 20 and 7, it says, and when 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, God and Magog, to gather them together to battle. The number of whom is as the sand of the sea. Now, this is saying that Satan, the wicked, who I just told you, that the self-proclaimed white men, right, the Edomites, they will go out and deceive the nations, right, and gather Gog and Magog to battle. Gog and Magog is Russia, pursuant to Ezekiel 38. Russia is gonna basically go to war in Ezekiel 38, but it's these devils that's drawing them out to the war. All right. So that was the answer. So you can say you got it wrong or not. Revelation 28 again, it says, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, God and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the name of whom is at the sand of the sea. All right, so this is talking about World War III. All right. And it goes into a lot, we got breakdowns on what, like Joel 3, or Isaiah 34, things like that regarding World War III. Revelations 11 and 14 tells you the third war coming quickly, right? Revelations 11 and 14 said the second war is past, and behold, the third war coming quickly. You had World War One, the first war, World War II, the second war. Now World War III, the third war, is upon us. All right, and they're trying to drag out Russia. All right, so listen to this. Now in this video, these men here are saying that basically that the West is trying to drag Russia into this war, and Russia says they have red lines, and again that goes into Ezekiel 38 because at some point, and I'll get it now because even that title alone made me think of it again. It says, John here says Russia's message to Europe, the gloves are coming off, right? In Ezekiel 38, where it goes into Russia coming against these nations, with many people joining with Russia. And get Ezekiel 38 and 4. Right? Matter of fact, I'll get from top. Ezekiel 38 and 1 says, and the word of the Lord Yahweh, Bashman Shai came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against God, the land of Magog. Right? And this is Russia again. You get an ancient Bible map, wherever the case may be, God could be in the area that the Edomites in Russia currently, would be at. All right, so God is the Russians, right? Magog is just Russia. Okay, it says, "Son of man, set thy face against God, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Bashman, behold, I'm against thee, O God, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal. And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws." Now you have to think about the USSR, right? Russia was defeated. The USSR was defeated, became docile, and whatnot. Right? But it says, "And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. I will bring thee forth with all thine army horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords." So the Most High, Yahweh, Bashman, is going to turn Russia back to a war machine. And I think about it all the time. Every month or so, there's a new missile that these Russians are making. You know, bringing it out, and that's the Most High doing work. Putting in that work is make His work come to pass, right? And it says what many. It says even a great company with bucklers and shield, all of them handling swords. So Russia's going to be joined with who? In verse 5, Persia, Iran, right? Ethiopia and Libya with them, Africa, right? All of them with shield and helmet. Gomer, Germany, and all his bands, the house of Togomor of the north quarters and all his bands, and many people with him, going up into like that Turkey area over there, it says, "Be thou prepared and prepare thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them." You know, After many days thou shalt be visited, in the latter years thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword and is gathered out of many people. This is talking about Israel and ultimately America, because you can't separate the two. Against the mountains of Israel, and if you get to see Isaiah 13, it goes to the Medes, right, which is Russia too. The Medes coming against America. It says, "Against the mountains of Israel, which have been always waste, but is brought forth out of the nations, and they shall dwell safely of them." Now, this basically explaining, Israel, and they dwell safely because of America, right? And that's why America and Israel is going to be destroyed together, all right? It says, verse 9, "Thou shalt ascend and come like a storm, thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land, thou and all thy band, and many people with thee." Right? But thus saith the Lord Yahweh, it shall also come to pass that at the same time shall things come to thy mind, and thou shalt think of evil thought, right? But basically going up against American Israel, right, and launching those nukes. And even in this video here, um, they talk about it, right? It says, "And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages." Why is the villages unwalled? Because Russia has missile capabilities that bypasses any type of defense system in the world currently right now. And they just making new missiles every day, new ones, better ones, right? And thus say, "And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them, building without walls and having neither balls nor gates, to take a spoil and to take a prey, to turn thine hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited, Israel, and upon the people that are gathered out of nations, which have gotten cattle and goods that dwell in the midst of the land." Again, so Israel and America right along with Israel, all right, and that's what's happening. They're being dragged out, right? And that's what they're explaining in this video. And they also explain that eventually Russia is saying that they only can think about using a nuke. So you can watch this video, right? But I just want to bring this out, that they're saying that like in the next couple seconds down here, whatever, that it's like they're just asking Russia to attack these targets, basically. Because in this video, EU or NATO is saying that, yeah, we're helping Ukraine and we're building these drone factories and yada yada yada. So Russia now has targets in NATO that they can hit that's helping Ukraine. So ultimately it's going to go down at some point. All right.
But
no, I think it's potentially suicidal, because we're saying that we want the Russians to act like we never would, that just because of some line somewhere or something on a document on a piece of paper, that there might be some respect, that we're going to allow a foreign country, a nuclear power or an alliance to, with impunity, just keep hitting American factories and whatever else, and nothing's going to happen.
So basically, I guess he's trying to do like some type of comparison, like if it was, some other place around the world building weapons for a foreign nation or something that was just hitting America, right? And nothing's supposed to happen about that. It's like you would do something about that.
because to me, that is just almost shoving Vladimir Putin into where, if especially if what Ursula von der Leyen said and Merz, and that they're actually going to do all this technology stuff to help more. Those factories have been named, by the way, by name by the Russians as targets. And it seems to me that we're just shoving Russia into a position to make them strike on these targets. And here, in fact,
right, and that's the point. They want this war, right? They want it to expand, right? They're trying to bring about their reset. Everybody's at war, you know. So to him, he said it seems like they just begging Russia to hit these targets. And the scriptures say they would, make them gather them to battle, basically, right? So that's exactly what's happening.
Is what I said a minute ago, that we would let Vladimir Putin speak for himself. Here's what he recently had to say.
The potential for conflict has risen significantly in a number of regions around the world, including in Eurasia. We see that if earlier NATO countries limited themselves to supporting the Kiev regime, which came to power through illegal armed means and a coup d'etat, they are now openly saying in the West that they are preparing for war with us and are increasing their defense budgets. To justify this spending and the radical militarization of their states, NATO and European Union leaders continue, as before, to resort to false claims about an alleged military threat from Russia.
So, I mean, maybe you've already answered this question, but how much further do you think that Putin is going to allow these kinds of strikes to keep hitting his country at the biggest cities, Moscow, St. Petersburg, Voronezh?
Exactly, and that's why I got Ezekiel 38, where it says that Ezekiel 38:10 is that point, right? Russia's going to, it's going to be another straw that breaks the camel's back again. Right, Ezekiel 38:10 again, it says, "Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, it shall also come to pass that at the same time shall things come to thy mind, and thou shalt think an evil thought." Right, and that's not far away.
Which apparently was an actual British Storm Shadow missile, so they've gone back to that. How much longer will he go before he actually does something like what you've described?
Let me make a couple points here. Just start by saying Dmitry Peskov just said recently, there was a big story in RT today about this, but Peskov said, and Peskov, for viewers who are not familiar with his name, he's Putin's principal spokesman, but Peskov said that Russia's only ace in the hole at this point in time is its nuclear deterrent. And I thought it was very interesting that Peskov was talking about the importance of Russia's nuclear deterrent, because I think in a very important way, he's basically saying that it's, and this of course gets at the Karaganov argument, it's the threat of using nuclear weapons or the actual use of nuclear weapons that probably is the only thing that can save the day for the Russians. So you just don't want to underestimate the extent to which the Russians understand that they are involved in mortal combat and that nuclear weapons are their ace in the hole. So we just want to keep that in mind. Now, with regard to Putin and how far he's willing to go, I think to some extent, Danny, a lot depends on what happens in the ground war. As I said to you, I think the Russians are clearly winning, and it looks like they're going to conquer all of the Donbass. They already have Lugansk, all of Lugansk, and they will, I believe, have all of Donetsk by either the end of the summer or the early fall. So they're doing well, but nevertheless, the progress is slow. There's just no question about that. And if you have progress that's slow on the battlefield and this drone campaign continues to ramp up, that could put Putin in a position where he feels compelled to do something that involves attacking into Europe sooner rather than later. However, if all of a sudden the Russians started winning big time on the battlefield in the next,
and I'll say whatever does happen, America's allies is gonna flip up on them. Whatever whatever Putin does, you know, to NATO, they gonna think about it, right? Because right here, uh, Revelation 17 and 10, the 10 horns is talking about NATO. All right. It says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall eat the whole. The beast represents America, but the whole system of America, It says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore. So the whore is actually America, but the system is what America has set up, NATO, EU, and all of that. Right? It says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. So even NATO is going to help Russia to shoot missiles on America, right? And ultimately also Israel, you know. So whatever Putin does do, is gonna shake them to the core, or make them switch sides.
Next month, that would probably have an effect on how Putin thinks about the drone war. He may be willing to not act in a decisive way.
And also, Slovakia, it could be, Nero 47 to occupy will helping Israel, not caring. You see, he was kind of helping, which we don't really know. We know that he's still helping Ukraine, I guess, in some way, shape, or form. Where this, he said things like, "Oh well, we're gonna sell weapons to NATO, and then NATO's gonna sell weapons to Ukraine. We're not gonna just give the weapons to Ukraine, whatever." But if they don't, if Trump scares away, and doesn't help NATO when they get attacked by Russia, then they could just turn on them,
quickly on that front. So I think what happens on the battlefield is interrelated, or is related to what happens in the in the drone war. The drone war and in the war on the battlefield, they're related to each other. But the bottom line here, and this is my final point, the bottom line is it's just very hard to tell. You're sort of in the dark here. And that's what, in my opinion, makes it all so scary. If you knew exactly where the red line was, then you can talk about marching up to the red line, but not crossing it. But the point is, we don't know where Putin's red line is. It's quite clear from what Peskov said and from the clip that you played.
And pretty much that's the point. Now I got this, because not ignorant of Satan's devices, and I pretty much already told you this is 2 Corinthians 2 and 11, says these Satan should get an advantage of us, but we're not ignorant of his devices, right? So this is Satan, right? The adversary behind the scenes, making this thing happen, right? Getting ready for that great war of Armageddon, all right? Let's see if I can find that real quick. He was like, sorry, let me grab this real quick. No, shit. That was 16. Sorry. But this is chapter Revelation 16 and 13. It says, and I saw 3 unclean spirits like a frog come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, out of the mouth of the false prophet. Right, so you got Roman Catholic Church, right? You got America, of course. So the mouth of basically out of America. Let me grab it. Bear with me. Right, so it says, And I saw three unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, right, which represents, Rome, but the revised Roman Empire, basically, right, and out of the mouth of the beast, which is America, NATO, right, and out of the mouth of the false prophet, which is the Roman Catholic Church, all right, which goes back to that Revelations 20 that I gave you, right, going into 7, where it's like gathering them together to battle. It says, "For they are the spirits of devils, right, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of the great day of Yahweh Almighty." All right. "Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. And he gathered them together in a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon, right, mountain of truths, right, which is World War III, and that's what they're doing, right? So we're not in his devices. The elites want this war, all right, and this is what I got right here. I said, why did Japan attack Pearl Harbor? It says Japan bombed Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, as a preemptive strike to cripple the U.S. Pacific Fleet. All right. Then I said, what started the war with Japan and the U.S.? It says the war between the United States and Japan was officially started by Japan's surprise military strike on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii on December 7, 1941. And I remember the famous quote where I said, what U.S. president said, if we didn't bomb Japan, if Japan didn't bomb us, we would have to bomb them next week. And then it says there's no official historical record or evidence of any U.S. president making this specific statement. It could have been, because I remember, and they're scrubbing a lot of stuff, right? For the next verse I'm about to get, which is Psalm 64 and 8. They're scrubbing things, right? Because the truth is coming out, like living water. It's coming out heavy. All right, but I looked it up on chat. I said if they didn't bomb Pearl Harbor, we would have to bomb them next week. It says this sentence or that sentence is a counterfactual claim that rather than an established historical fact. If you mean if Japan hadn't attacked Pearl Harbor, the United States would have bombed Japan the following week. However, this was said. This is documented, right? In a movie, someone said it somewhere, right? This is facts. There is no historical evidence to support that, right? But these devils are, trying to cover up as much as they can. It said before the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, said the United States had imposed economic sanctions and an oil embargo on Japan. Oh, going back to that question I asked you earlier, that was one of the things that they're doing to Russia, sanctions. It says relations were extremely tense and both countries were preparing for the possibility of war. Oh my goodness. That's happening right now. It says, however, the U.S. had not planned to launch a bombing campaign against Japan the next week. But they want the war, right? They're trying to make someone else start it. All right. So, if you can find that up, if you find it, you can drop it in the comment section or whatnot. But yeah, that statement was definitely said. And it's because all wars are bankers' wars, right? They want this war, right? So yeah, the West is dragging Russia to this war. They're trying to drag it to this war. Psalm 64 and 8. So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away. All right. So, that's what's happening. Lord willing, we were edified from this lesson. Shalom to the whole elect, which consists of men, women, and children. Shalom.